report on this?
So you
Okay,
know,
great.
there's a couple of people in the background talking, so I may not be able to hear you quite as well. So
Okay.
is it okay if I ask you to repeat, or are you going to edit anything, or?
Yeah, I can repeat as much as you want. Okay. So, hi everybody. My name is Anushka Prock with NSMA, and today I'm here with Mr. Joe Zone, who currently serves as a sports director of WFSB TV in Hartford, Connecticut. Mr. Zone, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, first off, I just want to say congratulations on your award.
Thank you very much. It's
And just
very honored.
and just kind of get us like started. How did you get interested in the industry?
Wow. Wait. So at the very beginning, I always had this sports love, and then I also had this love for being able to talk to people, entertain people. I used to pick up a spatula and interview my cousins and ask them questions and stuff. So I just had this natural, I was a shy little Italian kid who needed a personality to get them going a little bit. So I just like the whole people would listen to me if I said something to them, if I had. So I had a pretend microphone, and I did the announcements at school during my senior year, and that's kind of, it took off from there.
Yeah. So, can you kind of walk us through your path from like your first job till sort of where you are today?
That's a pretty long path. You sure you can deal with it? So, um, I got my first job in Syracuse, New York. I was a big hockey fan, used to go to all the Syracuse Blazers home games, and diehard longtime hockey fans know that the Syracuse Blazers, the movie Slapshot, which starred Paul Newman, was based on that movie. So minor league hockey was very big in Syracuse. I happened to work in the men's clothing store right across the street from the arena, the War Memorial, where the team played. One day, the announcer for the Blazers came in and wanted to buy a shirt and tie, and I was talking to him. Oh yes, at the game, and I go to all the hockey games, and boy, I love what you do. I wish I could have something like a career like that. And so Andy McWilliams, the play-by-play announcer, said to me, well, we're looking for a couple of people to maybe do some 30-second hockey reports to boost the team up. So I'm going to send you down to one of the local radio stations, go down there, introduce yourself to the general manager, Tom Shine, and see what happens. Went down. I wrote a little 30-second script based on the game from the night before, read for him. He said, you got the job. So that's how it all started for me. Walked into a radio station after talking to the play-by-play guy, and that's how I got my very first job in radio. This is Syracuse, 1973. So now, of course, you're going to the games. You meet people in the industry at the games. Met a couple of TV guys. They knew me just from the radio reports a little bit. Said, well, we're looking for a weekend sportscaster. Why don't you come down and audition? This was TV. I knew nothing at all about TV. Did the audition, got that weekend sports job in Syracuse at the ABC station, WYXT. From there, the weekend job, their sports director left. I got the #1 job. A year later, KNBC in Los Angeles, a scout in those days, they would find their talent by sending executives around the country, talent scouts, to look at local newscasts. A guy by the name of Bill Slatter, an NBC scout for NBC, called me on the phone, and I'm working in Syracuse, said, saw your stuff. Someday I think we can have a place for you at NBC. A couple of months later, I was doing the weekends at KNBC in Los Angeles. They hired me out of Syracuse. I went from market 52 to market 2, like that at 25, not even close to ready. Brian Gumble was my sports director. Lasted 1 year. From there, went to Scranton, Pennsylvania at WNEP, which was just becoming one of the powerhouse stations in the country, and still to this day is one of the highest rated television stations. Went there, worked there for 1 year. WJAR in Providence was looking for an edgy, different kind of a guy, starting up a new 7 o'clock newscast. Hired me, went to Providence, WJAR, for 1 year because WNEP in Scranton wanted me back. That's not a good position to be in. So after my 1 year in Providence, I went back to WNEP in Scranton. Worked there for the next 5 years. At that time, WCAU in Philly was looking for #2 sportscaster. Their general manager was up in the Poconos skiing, turned on the TV, saw me, called me up, said, "I'd like to bring you down to WCAU. I'm looking for a weekend guy. I want you to audition." I went down there. They were about to offer me the job, but as it turns out, WCAU was a CBS O&O, but the CBS O&O in New York was also looking for a weekend sports guy. CBS in New York said, "We're going to take Zone. We want him at our place." So that's how I ended up at Channel 2 in New York, 86 and 87. Worked there for 2 years. And then when that contract was up and I did not get rehired, back to WNEP in Scranton for my third stint there. Worked there for 3 more years. Did not get renewed there. Next thing I know, I'm working at WFLD in Chicago. They had seen me doing some independent stuff, just doing some private stuff. They had seen me. They brought me in. I did 2 years at WFLD in Chicago. Happened to be there at the time. They were a Fox station at the time that Fox got the NFL. And that was a huge, huge opportunity to work there for 2 years. So after those 2 years, that contract's up, did not get renewed. I end up going back to Syracuse, my old town, different station, the Fox station in Syracuse, looking for a sports guy. Worked there for 3, 4 months, asked me if I wanted to be the news anchor. So I became the news anchor at that time at that station. Then when they blew up their news, took news completely off there at Fox, I slipped over to the NBC station in Syracuse, worked there for 9 years. And after that, here in Hartford, the general manager who hired me a couple of times and also fired me in Scranton was looking for a sports guy here, hired me here. That was back in 2006. And I've been here for the last 19 and a half years. So that's the short version, long version.
That's great. So like how do you continue to remain like motivated and like flexible throughout your journey, specifically like when you're kind of like moving between jobs and like having to like overcome these like obstacles and like challenges?
So, there's no question. And what has changed so dramatically for us in the business is MMJ work, multimedia journalist, shooting your own video. For, the first 30 years of my career, I didn't have to pick up a camera. Now here I am in Hartford, and now I'm shooting my own video, shooting my own games. I'm, editing all that stuff I never had to do. So the job has certainly gotten harder, but here's what I love. We cover a lot of high school sports here. So in 50 years, what hasn't changed? Mom and dad love seeing their kids on TV. And they don't want to see them on the phone or on the computer on the desk and in the office. They want to see them on the big TV in the living room. That has not changed in 50 years. So we put a lot of kids on TV. Parents love us. They thank us. Coaches thank us. It's rare in our business where broadcasters are getting thanked for doing their job. If anything, it's just the opposite. So that's a big motivating factor. The second thing is I'm now on the University of Connecticut beat with the media partners. So 90% of my time is spent covering UConn, women's basketball, national champs. I've been to every one of the Final Fours in the last 15 years. UConn men, back-to-back championships, covered them. So that beat, again, I'm on these big stories that have a lot of importance, putting lots of kids on TV. And look at this stage of my life, to think that I'm still able to do something relevant, something that's important. Those are the things. And the last thing is, I still like when that red light comes on and the microphone's here and it says go. I just love going on television, and that has not changed at all.
So sort of like a follow-up to that second point, what do you think is the importance of like local networks and like helping to increase the coverage of like a lot of like sports that might not be covered as hugely on like a national scale?
Yeah, I think I just need you to repeat that. But I think if you're saying what's the most important thing for local television stations to do in terms of covering sports, is that basically your question?
Yeah, basically like how like local networks aid in like covering like sports that might not be covered as hugely on a national scale.
Yeah, well, here's the thing with, with social media now and with all of these podcasts and digital broadcast, and nobody is staying up until 11:20 to see Joe Zone give them Yankees highlights or Red Sox highlights. They're getting them on their phone. They're getting them early. So it's super important for local television stations to do local, local stories, putting local kids on TV, putting local stories on TV, people in your community, in your town who you can identify. I'm not a big scores and highlights person. I've had to do them for my whole career, but I've never seen ESPN as the end all for me. I like being in the local community, talking to people in the community, interacting with people in the community. What buttons to push? You go into a town, you figure out what people are talking about. You push those buttons, you cover those stories. So you really have to figure out what's going on in town, what's important where you're working in the community you're living in, and focus as much of your attention as you can on the national stuff. I mean, clearly, if you work in a big market, you're covering major sports most of the time. When I worked in New York, I didn't do one high school story. When I worked in Chicago, I didn't do one high school story. But in these markets now, where you're shooting your own video and you're going there in person, it's ultra important. It's imperative that you do local sports. And scores and highlights aren't as important as telling people stories, feature stories, things that you want to know about these athletes you see all the time that you may not know little parts of their stories. It's up to you to tell those stories, and then people can identify with some of those bigger stage athletes.
Right. What has been like one of like your favorite stories or games that you've covered in like your career?
Well, so my all-time favorite, number one on my list is growing up in upstate New York, Troy, New York, as a New York Giants football fan. Back in the day when there was only one game on the week on Sunday, and my father and I and my brother would sit there, and that would be our family event. So in 1986, 87, where am I? I'm in New York, Channel 2. And who's going to the Super Bowl for the first time ever? The New York Football Giants. And where am I? I'm covering the New York Football Giants. I covered their entire season, went to every one of their games, then went to Pasadena and covered the Giants' first ever Super Bowl. So that's my number one favorite story to cover of all time. Now, down the line, Joe Paterno's first ever national championship. Covered that one. Penn State, Georgia, Superdome, national TV, number one versus number two. Great story. Love that one. Jim Boeheim in Syracuse, the great basketball coach. His first and only national championship with Carmelo Anthony. Covered that one. In person, live shots, the whole thing. That one. Gino Auriemma, his latest national championship. When people thought maybe the reign was over, maybe this old guy didn't know how to do it anymore. I can appreciate with old guys who still know how to do it. Last year's national championship with Paige Beckers getting hers, one of my favorite stories of all time to cover. So those are like the top four in there for me.
Yeah, that's great. And just kind of like, what would you say is like some advice that you'd want to give to like young aspiring like broadcast journalists, sort of like myself who want to get into the sports industry?
Well, you're going to have to figure out, first of all, how much you're willing to sacrifice early on in your life. If you want to move, everybody, I say everybody, a lot of people in our business, especially those who come through the big universities like Syracuse and, Ithaca and Missouri Northwestern and all these big journalism schools, they think they have to be someplace at some point in their career, at some age, where they're a failure. Got to be at ESPN by the time I'm 35. Well, the problem is all these kids who I see, they're so worried about the destination, they don't appreciate the journey. I've never, now, of course, I went in differently. I didn't go to big time university. I didn't have that big time education. For me, it was always about where am I now? What am I doing now? Not where am I going to be next? It was never about what's next. It's always about right now. So figure out if you love it this much and you enjoy the business this much, that you can just love doing it where you are. Of course, you want to make more money. And sure, when you're young, you want to be covering big time stories and big time events. But the long game, if you want to play the long game, you got to enjoy the ride right now.
Yeah.
And you've got to make it local, cover it local. You got to be able to separate yourself out. So you've got to figure out who you are as a broadcaster. Are you going to be a big personality guy? Are you going to be an X's and O's person? Can you be in between? But you got to figure out who you are. And the best advice I can really give to you is find one mentor or two at the most. Don't be asking all kinds of people advice about how good you're doing. Because don't ask mom and dad, because they're always going to tell you you're doing great. You have to find somebody who you trust, who's had success in the business, who will tell you exactly what's what, and follow a mentor's advice. One, maybe two, no more. Because you get three or four opinions, your head's going to explode and you're not going to know which way to go.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. That's all my questions. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Will we see you at the big event next
Yes.
month? Are you going to be
Yes.
there?
Yes, I'll be there.
Great.
Thank you
Well, I
so
look forward to
much.
seeing you there.
Looking forward to seeing you there. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for the interview. Bye.
Bye.